It's a very sacred spot, and I mean, you feel that sacredness.
If there's one thing I've learned, it's that history has a way of keeping secrets until the right moment.
They're seeing something that they believed in all their life.
For centuries, people have debated, searched, and theorized about one of the most significant locations in human history. The tomb of Jesus Christ.
My knees are shaking a little bit because I wasn't expecting this.
It's the place that changed everything. The site where, according to Christian belief, death itself was defeated. But what if I told you that after nearly 2,000 years, researchers actually opened it?
Yeah. Okay.
The tomb of Jesus. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem is one of the holiest sites in Christianity, believed to hold the very tomb where Jesus was buried.
It's a very sacred spot, and I mean, you feel that sacredness when you go into the building.
Millions of people have visited it, prayed there, and wondered what might actually be inside. But for nearly 500 years, no one had dared to open it. That changed in 2016 when a group of researchers finally cracked it open, and even they weren't ready to go through everything they were about to find.
My knees are shaking a little bit because I wasn't expecting this.
For centuries, the tomb had been sealed beneath layers of marble, locked away since at least 1555. It was part of a larger shrine, itself surrounded by a church that had been built and rebuilt over the ages. But the big question remained, was this really the place where Jesus had been buried? Or was it just another monument built over a legend? There was only one way to find out. So, in October 2016, a team of archaeologists, scientists, and religious scholars got permission to open the tomb for the first time in centuries. It was a delicate process. One wrong move, and they could destroy something priceless. As they carefully removed the marble slabs, layers of history were peeled away.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they saw it. Beneath all the stone and dust was a limestone burial bed. Not just any slab of rock. This was the spot where Jesus' body was supposedly laid to rest over 2,000 years ago. And it had been hidden for centuries, perfectly preserved, untouched for half a millennium. But then came the real shock. There was nothing inside. No bones, no remains, no evidence that a body had ever decayed there. Just an empty tomb. Now, if you know the story of Christianity, this might not sound surprising. The entire faith is built on the belief that Jesus rose from the dead, leaving his tomb empty. But standing there, looking at the actual burial bed with their own eyes, even the researchers had to take a moment. This wasn't just a religious idea anymore. It was real. So, what does this actually mean? For believers, it's proof that the story they've always known is true. The tomb is exactly where it was always said to be. For skeptics, it's an insane historical find. This site has been considered Jesus' tomb for at least 1,700 years, ever since St. Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, identified it in the 4th century. Whether you believe in the resurrection or not, the fact that people have protected and honored this exact spot for so long is mind-blowing. And here's the wildest part. It almost never happened. The tomb was in danger of collapsing, and if researchers hadn't stepped in when they did, it might have remained sealed forever. Who knows what else could be buried beneath those layers of history? What other secrets are waiting to be uncovered? It still blows my mind that in a world of satellites, AI, and high-tech excavation tools, there are still mysteries hidden in plain sight, like the Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria.
Like and subscribe right now, and you'll have amazing luck for the rest of the week.
This is one of those things that should probably just stay buried. Ancient Egypt is already packed with cursed tombs, hidden chambers, and relics that supposedly bring doom to anyone who disturbs them. But then, there's the Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria.
A huge coffin found at a construction site in Alexandria.
A 2,000-year-old coffin so massive and mysterious that even archaeologists hesitated before opening it.
Might reveal the body of Alexander the Great or unleash a deadly curse.
When the sarcophagus was first discovered in 2018, it was unlike anything experts had seen before. Buried nearly 16 feet underground, this thing was huge, nearly 9 feet long, made of black granite, and completely sealed. Everyone thought cracking it open would unleash some kind of ancient curse. Now, let's be real. Science doesn't exactly support the whole mummy's curse thing, but when you're dealing with an ancient jet-black coffin that hasn't been touched in 2 millennia, you don't take chances. Still, curiosity won. In July 2018, a team of Egyptian archaeologists lifted the lid, ready to uncover a piece of lost history. What they found inside was horrifying. Forget golden treasures and royal remains. This thing was filled with murky, red-brown liquid and 3 skeletons floating in it. The smell? Unbearable. The liquid turned out to be sewage that had seeped in over the centuries, basically turning the whole thing into a human stew. If the bones had once belonged to an important figure, there was no way of telling now. Experts believe the skeletons were likely soldiers or high-status individuals from Egypt's Ptolemaic period, buried together for reasons still unknown. There were no inscriptions, no fancy burial masks, nothing to definitively say who they were. Just 3 decayed bodies and a lot of really gross water. And here's the crazy part. Despite the nightmarish scene inside, people actually wanted to drink the liquid. No, really. Shortly after the discovery, a bizarre online petition popped up demanding that the mummy juice be bottled and sold as an energy drink. Over 36,000 people signed it. I have no words for that. In the end, the Black Sarcophagus didn't hold a great ruler or a long-lost treasure, but it proved one thing. Even after thousands of years, the past still has plenty of surprises. And sometimes, those surprises are absolutely disgusting. But others are interesting to say the least, like Tomb of Alexander the Great. History doesn't like giving up its biggest secrets, and it's a fact we come face to face with. We've uncovered pharaohs, lost cities, and ancient wonders that were thought to be myths. But the tomb of Alexander the Great? Still missing. And that's insane when you consider this guy was one of the most powerful rulers in history. For centuries, people have claimed to know where he was buried. His tomb was supposedly in Alexandria, Egypt, placed in a grand mausoleum fit for a king. Early records say Roman emperors even visited his body, paying tribute to the man who built an empire stretching from Greece to India. But at some point, the tomb vanished. No one knows how or why. It wasn't destroyed in a single event. There's no clear mention of its fate. It just disappeared. That hasn't stopped people from searching.
Finding the tomb of Alexander is the Holy Grail.
It's pretty exciting.
Over 140 locations have been suggested, ranging from Alexandria to Greece to even Siwa Oasis, where Alexander was declared the son of Zeus. Every time someone thinks they've found it, the evidence never fully holds up. In 2019, when they found the Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria, some believed it could be the tomb. But as usual, no inscriptions, no royal artifacts, nothing to prove it belonged to Alexander. The biggest problem? Ancient Alexandria is mostly buried beneath modern buildings and the sea. Finding a lost tomb there is like looking for a single grain of sand in a desert. But some experts believe that if the tomb is still out there, it's hiding in plain sight. Maybe beneath a mosque, a church, or even a basement that no one's thought to excavate. Alexander wanted to be buried in Egypt. His generals were originally taking his body back to Macedonia, but somewhere along the way, Ptolemy, one of his top commanders, hijacked the funeral procession and brought him to Egypt instead. That means his tomb was never just some random resting place. It was a statement of power.
Look at this place!
So, where is he? That's the million-dollar question. Some say his remains were secretly moved, others think his body was stolen, and a few believe his tomb is still sitting somewhere beneath Alexandria, waiting for the right person to dig in the right spot. If it's ever found, it'll be one of the biggest discoveries in history. But until then, Alexander the Great remains the most famous missing person of all time, right next to King Tut's tomb. Ancient Egypt is full of tombs, curses, and hidden chambers.
Oh, that's a fabulous one.
But none are more famous than the tomb of King Tutankhamun. For over 3,000 years, it remained sealed, untouched by time, until 1922, when archaeologist Howard Carter pried open the door and stepped inside. What he found was beyond anything anyone expected. Tutankhamun was a minor pharaoh, barely ruling for a decade before dying mysteriously at 19.
He died when he was about 19.
His name was almost erased from history, and yet his tomb became the most famous ever discovered. Why? Because it was intact. Unlike other royal burials looted centuries ago, Tut's tomb was sealed so tightly that everything inside remained almost exactly as it had been when the boy king was laid to rest. The first glimpse inside was surreal. Golden statues, jeweled daggers, chariots, furniture. It was packed with over 5,000 artifacts meant to accompany him into the afterlife. Then came the biggest find, the sarcophagus. Inside, 3 nested coffins, each more elaborate than the last. And at the center, King Tut himself, his face covered by a solid gold burial mask that became the symbol of ancient Egypt. But here's where it gets weird. Almost immediately, people started whispering about a curse. Carter's sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, died mysteriously just months after the discovery, leading to rumors that anyone who entered the tomb was doomed. Other strange deaths and accidents followed, fueling the legend. Scientists, of course, brushed it off as coincidence, but then they found something even stranger. When researchers examined Tut's remains, they discovered his burial had been rushed. The oils used in his mummification had caused his body to decompose rapidly, basically cooking him inside the tomb. Scorch marks on the walls even suggested a chemical reaction took place after the chamber was sealed. This wasn't the carefully prepared burial of a great ruler. It was more like a last-minute cover-up. And the biggest mystery? His cause of death. Some say infection from a broken leg, others think malaria. But the injuries on his body suggest something far worse, possibly even murder. The tomb held answers, but it also left behind more questions than anyone expected. For all its treasures and secrets, King Tut's tomb proved one thing. History still has plenty of surprises, and sometimes the biggest discoveries aren't the ones made of gold. They're the ones that rewrite what we thought we knew. Just like the world found out the deepest secrets of the Qin Shi Huang Mausoleum after it was found.
One of the greatest wonders of the world.
Ancient tombs are usually meant to be explored, but some are better left untouched. That's exactly the case with the Mausoleum of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor. For over 2,000 years, it has remained sealed, hiding secrets that archaeologists are terrified to uncover. Unlike most royal tombs, this one isn't just a burial site, it's an entire underground kingdom, built to protect its ruler in the afterlife. And to this day, no one has dared to open it. Most people know about the Terracotta Army, thousands of life-sized clay soldiers guarding the emperor's tomb. When they were first discovered in 1974, it was one of the greatest archaeological finds in history. But the real mystery is the actual tomb itself, which still lies untouched beneath a massive burial mound. Despite decades of research, no one knows exactly what's inside, and the few ancient records that describe it make it sound more like a death trap than a resting place. According to historical texts, the tomb is filled with treasures, golden palaces, and rivers of liquid mercury meant to mimic the flow of China's real rivers. That last part is not just legend. Soil samples around the site have tested off the charts for mercury, meaning the toxic metal could still be sloshing around inside after 2 millennia. One wrong move, and whoever enters first might be walking into a poisonous gas chamber. But mercury isn't the only problem. The entire structure is an engineering nightmare. The tomb was designed to be impossible to breach, with booby traps rumored to be hidden inside. Yes, actual traps, like crossbows that could still be functional after thousands of years. The Chinese government has been cautious, refusing to risk damaging the site or triggering something they can't control. So why not use modern technology? Scans have confirmed the presence of large chambers, but the materials inside make it impossible to see exactly what's there without physically opening it. Unlike King Tut's tomb, which was discovered relatively intact, this is on an entirely different level. Scientists know they only have one shot to get it right, and rushing in could mean losing priceless history forever. For now, the tomb of Qin Shi Huang remains sealed. In a way, so do Pompeii's frozen-in-time bodies. Some disasters fade into history. Pompeii froze in it. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, it buried the city in volcanic ash so fast that people didn't even have time to run. Their final moments were captured in terrifying detail. Their bodies preserved exactly as they fell. And now, new excavations are revealing even more about what really happened in those last desperate seconds. For centuries, Pompeii was nothing more than a legend, a city wiped off the map in a single day. But in the 18th century, archaeologists began digging, and what they found was like a time capsule from ancient Rome. Streets, houses, temples, everything was still there, frozen in ash. Then they discovered something even more haunting: the people. The victims of Pompeii weren't just skeletons. The ash hardened around their bodies, leaving behind perfect molds of their final poses. Archaeologists injected plaster into these voids, revealing the exact expressions and movements of those who died. Some were curled up in fear, others tried to shield themselves, and a few were found huddled together, whole families trapped in their homes. But recent excavations have uncovered something even darker. New bodies have been found in doorways, suggesting that people tried to escape but turned back when the heat became unbearable. Some were carrying valuables, proving they had only seconds to grab what they could. And shockingly, some show signs of having survived the initial eruption, only to be killed by the toxic gases that swept through the city hours later. And it wasn't just Pompeii. A nearby town, Herculaneum, suffered an even worse fate. There, the heat was so intense, nearly 900 degrees Fahrenheit, that it instantly vaporized people, leaving only bones and skulls that cracked from the heat. Researchers even found a man whose brain had turned to glass because of the extreme temperature, something almost unheard of in archaeology. The latest excavations are giving us an even clearer picture of what it was like to be in Pompeii that day. It wasn't just a volcanic eruption, it was a city-wide death trap. And yet, despite the destruction, Pompeii remains one of the best preserved ancient cities in the world. The people may have been lost, but their final moments and their lives are still telling their story 2,000 years later. The same way we're still talking about the Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin has been called a miracle, a mystery, and a hoax all at the same time. For centuries, people have debated whether this ancient linen cloth really bears the image of Jesus Christ, or if it's just an elaborate medieval forgery. But new scientific analysis is revealing details that have left even the skeptics stunned. The shroud first appeared in historical records in the 14th century, but legend says it goes back much further. Measuring 14 feet long, the cloth bears a faint image of a man who appears to have been crucified, complete with wounds matching those described in the Bible. The question is, how did the image get there? unlike paint or ink, the markings aren't made from any known pigment. They're more like a scorch, almost as if they were burned into the fabric by a sudden burst of energy. In the 1980s, carbon dating tests suggested the shroud was from the Middle Ages, but critics argued the samples were taken from a contaminated section of the cloth. More recent studies have cast doubt on those results, with some experts claiming the fibers could actually be 2,000 years old. Then there's the blood. Yes, real human blood has been detected on the fabric, and it shows signs of trauma consistent with crucifixion. And now, the latest forensic analysis has uncovered something even more shocking. Advanced imaging has revealed that the image is three-dimensional, meaning it's not just a stain, but a complex imprint that changes depending on the angle. Some researchers even believe the shroud's markings could have been created by an intense burst of radiation, something that would explain why no known artistic technique can replicate it. So, is the Shroud of Turin proof of the resurrection, or just an ancient relic wrapped in mystery? Scientists are still trying to answer that question, but one thing is certain. Every time they think they've solved the mystery, the shroud refuses to give up its secrets. On the other side of the world, we have Göbekli Tepe. Some discoveries change what we thought we knew about history. Göbekli Tepe erased the timeline completely. Before its discovery, historians believed that organized religion, large-scale architecture, and settled civilization didn't exist until humans started farming. But this 12,000-year-old site in modern-day Turkey shattered that idea because it was built before agriculture by hunter-gatherers who supposedly weren't capable of such complex construction. First uncovered in the 1990s, Göbekli Tepe consists of massive stone pillars arranged in circles, some weighing up to 20 tons. These weren't just random stones. Many are covered in intricate carvings of animals, including lions, snakes, and vultures. And here's the catch. The site is thousands of years older than Stonehenge, or the pyramids of Egypt. Somehow, a society with no evidence of farming managed to organize labor, transport massive stones, and build what appears to be a religious or ceremonial complex. And then it gets even weirder. Unlike most ancient sites that were abandoned over time, Göbekli Tepe was intentionally buried around 8000 BCE. Why? No one knows. Some researchers believe it was a religious ritual, while others suggest it was an attempt to preserve the site. Either way, the fact that an advanced organized society existed before the invention of farming has forced historians to rethink everything about how human civilization began. But the biggest question remains: who built it? No written records exist, and no signs of permanent housing have been found nearby, suggesting the builders may have traveled from different regions just to construct this site. Some theories even suggest that Göbekli Tepe marks the birthplace of organized religion itself, a sacred gathering place long before the first cities. Archaeologists are still uncovering its secrets, but one thing is clear: history isn't what we thought it was. Göbekli Tepe isn't just old, it's a time capsule from a forgotten era, proving that humanity's first steps towards civilization happened far earlier than we ever imagined, in the same way the Dead Sea Scrolls did. Found in a series of desert caves near the Dead Sea in the 1940s, these ancient texts are some of the oldest surviving copies of the Hebrew Bible, dating back over 2,000 years. But what makes them truly shocking is what they reveal, not just about religion, but about a mysterious group that may have influenced the origins of Christianity itself. The first scrolls were discovered by accident when a Bedouin shepherd tossed a rock into a cave and heard something shatter. Inside, he found clay jars filled with ancient parchment. As archaeologists rushed to the site, they uncovered over 900 manuscripts spread across multiple caves. These included fragments of nearly every book of the Old Testament, some almost identical to modern versions, others with major differences that challenge traditional interpretations. But who wrote them? That's where things get interesting. Many scholars believe they were created by a Jewish sect called the Essenes, a group that lived in isolation and practiced strict religious purity. Some of their beliefs, like baptism, apocalyptic prophecy, and a coming teacher of righteousness, sound eerily similar to early Christian teachings. Could these texts be a missing link between Judaism and the rise of Christianity? And then there's the Copper Scroll. Unlike the others, it isn't made of parchment. It's a sheet of pure copper with strange engravings listing hidden treasure. Some believe it's an inventory of sacred artifacts from the Jewish temple, possibly buried before the Roman destruction of Jerusalem. To this day, no one has found the treasure, but one that nobody was able to even understand was Skeleton Lake in Rupkund, India. High in the Indian Himalayas, at over 16,000 feet above sea level, there's a lake that holds a chilling secret. Rupkund Lake, also called Skeleton Lake, is frozen for most of the year. But when the ice melts, it reveals something deeply unsettling. Hundreds of human skeletons scattered along the shore and beneath the water, and no one knows exactly how they got there. The bones were first discovered in the 1940s, and at first, British officials thought they belonged to Japanese soldiers from World War II. But when scientists examined the remains, they realized they were much, much older, some dating back over 1,200 years. What's even stranger is that the skeletons aren't from a single group. DNA analysis shows they came from at least 3 different populations, including South Asians, Mediterranean people, and even individuals with Southeast Asian ancestry. How did such a diverse group end up dying in the same remote place? The leading theory is that a massive hailstorm may have killed them. Many of the skulls show signs of blunt force trauma, as if they were struck by something heavy from above. Some researchers believe they were part of a pilgrimage that got caught in an unexpected storm, with ice chunks the size of baseballs striking them down. But that still doesn't explain why people from thousands of miles away were also found there. Another theory suggests Rupkund was a ritual burial site, possibly linked to ancient Himalayan religious practices. Others think it could have been the site of a tragic battle, though no weapons have been found. And the mystery deepens. Some of the skeletons date to as recently as 200 years ago, meaning the lake was still drawing people to their deaths long after the original group perished. Even today, Rupkund Lake remains an eerie place. Every summer, as the ice recedes, new skeletons emerge, keeping the mystery alive. Scientists are still searching for answers, but one thing is clear. Whatever happened at Rupkund, it was deadly enough to leave its mark for over 1,000 years. What do you think happened here?